My name is Jake, welcome to the channel, and today's video I want to talk about financial independence and some things that my wife and I have learned here these last couple of years and how our priorities have changed over these last couple of years. And talk a little bit more about the not so obvious part that not a lot of people talk about it because it's not very entertaining. It's not that sexy clickbait topic that you might find in other videos. This is really just the raw and uncut version of what it's really like and what it's been like and how our priorities have changed. And that's going to be what I'm going to talk about in today's video. So for those of you that have been following the channel here on YouTube, I have a couple different topics that I like talking about. I like talking about dividend investing. I think that's pretty obvious. I have the Review My Pie series where I review subscriber portfolios. I have Financial Independence to Retire Early, where I'd like to talk about financial independence, talking about reaching FIRE. And that's really been the core of the channel these last couple of years. These last couple of months, I haven't talked so much about it. And I wanted to, take this time and share with you some of the things that I've been thinking about and how kind of our priorities have changed. And it's really interesting. We've been pursuing FIRE for the last 5 years. And it's interesting to see how things were back then 5 years ago and how things are today. And what I think might be really interesting for a lot of you is the majority of those of you following my channel are a bit younger, in your maybe early 20s, early 30s, some in your 40s, 50s, etc. But the overwhelming majority are in your 20s and 30s. And I think, I did a poll here a couple of months ago on when do you plan to live off of your dividend portfolio, right? Assuming that you're trying to achieve some form of FIRE, financial independence. And the overwhelming majority said 10 plus years. So about 90% of you are in the early stages of this journey of reaching FIRE. And when I think back, 5 years ago, my wife and I, we were in our late 20s, so about 29, when we first really were thinking about this and started putting a plan together. And our priorities and our goals back then were very different than they are today. And 90% of you watching my channel, you probably are not going to be thinking about the things that I'm going to talk about in this video, and that's okay. But I think it would be valuable to you to kind of get exposure to how things are going to maybe change. Your priorities are going to change as you get closer and closer to your FIRE date. But when I look back on when we first started, it was really kind of a bumpy ride. We didn't have all the answers. We dove head first and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And there was a lot of ups and downs over these last couple of years. And it kind of looked a little like this.
Ready? Okay. Believe and achieve.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, gotta love it. Gotta love it. All right, cool. So I want to just, I don't have a script for today's video. I just, jotted down some notes and some ideas of things that, I wanted to highlight in today's video. But I think it's really interesting when I reflect on these last couple of years of how, my mindset has changed, right? Back in 2018, my wife and I, we were in pretty good careers. My wife, not so much. I mean, my wife used to work at GameStop, right? Like she was not a high earner. She was making, I can't even remember how many dollars an hour she was making, but we were not like really in the best financial situation. I had a good job, but we weren't rich or anything. We really had that humble beginning, right? And so our priorities back then when we were first starting was really just, how do we make as much money as we can? How do we save as much money as we can? And how do we stay out of consumer debt, right? Those are the main things that we really focused on. And today, we both are in really great careers. We make a good salary. we're doing very, very well comparatively to, 5 years ago. Now, for the remainder of the video, I want to go over 7 topics of things that have come up more and more as we're getting closer to FIRE than when we first started out. But here, the first thing that I want to talk about is tax optimization. When I first started learning about the FIRE movement, I didn't really think too much about taxes. For whatever reason, I wasn't a high earner, I didn't make a lot of money, and so taxes were not really a topic for me front and center. But now, as we're getting closer and closer to our goal of reaching FIRE, the tax implication that we may be facing is really just become more and more at the center of our planning of how we invest, right? If it wasn't for taxes, I would invest like 50% in these covered call ETFs, right? And into REITs, right? Go all in these 10 plus dividend yielders. But the taxes have a massive impact on our decision making when it comes to our portfolio construction. Okay. And, I think a lot of people, everyone's a socialist until they have to start paying taxes. Sure, I would love to get everything for free, but in the reality of things, we're going to have to pay taxes, and we want to make sure that we optimize our investments. So that is absolutely something that has changed these last couple of years versus when we first started investing. The second on this list here is healthcare coverage. Now, when we're working at our day job, we get healthcare through our employer. Once we both quit, my wife and I, once we quit our jobs, we're no longer going to be having employer-sponsored healthcare coverage. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure that out on our own. And this is a really stressful piece because whenever you think about people that go bankrupt or people that have, black swan events in their lives, it really, a lot of times it has to do with unforeseen healthcare costs. And so for me, this has caused a lot of stress because it is one of those things that I can't plan for. I can't really plan for where, what the costs are going to be 5 years from now, 6 years from now, tomorrow, right? There's also a political piece here that plays a role, something that's outside of my control. So healthcare has been on my mind so much more these last couple of months and year than they ever were in the first years of pursuing FIRE. And so if you're in your 20s or 30s and you're working your day job, you don't think about this. But as you get closer to your goal of, quitting and living off of your portfolio, it becomes a real thing. And it's like, whoa, okay, this is all new. And there's a lot of complexity. And it's even actually to the point where my wife and I were thinking about relocating outside of the US simply due to healthcare costs. My wife is from northern Germany. We were thinking about moving back to Germany to get on the healthcare system in Germany. We've thought about going to Panama or Portugal or other countries where the healthcare, costs and system is not so complex. But we're now kind of on the boat here or on the side of things where we want to stay in the US, and it's just going to be a very expensive line item in our costs. And it's a reality that we didn't think about when we first started pursuing FIRE. The third thing here is geolocation flexibility. And what I mean by this is, when you're working a day job, you're usually constrained to a location, right? We live in Austin, Texas. And so my job is I live in Austin. My wife lives in Austin. We work here. When we reach FIRE, we want to go and travel somewhere else, right? We want to go to, travel within the United States, internationally. And there's costs associated with that, right? There's healthcare premiums and costs associated with that. There's other things like that play a role. Also, really big for me is I want to be where it's warm. I would love to live in the mountains year round, but I want to freeze my butt off and have arthritis half of the year. If it wasn't for it being so cold, I would have relocated to Kalispell, Montana and moved up to Whitefish, up in that area, and I build a house up in the mountains. But I realized that it's really cold half the year. And so being flexible on where we're at has been a big priority of mine today, whereas in my early 20s, late 20s, it really wasn't a thing. And so and also where my parents are at, where my friends are at, right? Do I want to be somewhere where we're all alone, or do we want to be where we're with family? Where is my family going to be moving? Where are they going to be at? And so you have flexibility, but also you kind of don't. And then you add a kid into the mix. Are we going to put our boy into, preschool? Where's that going to be at? There's all of these things that I didn't think about up until now. And it's been pretty different. It's been a whole different brain exercise these last couple of months, now factoring in, okay, well, what is this going to look like? And it's not something that you can easily plan for. Whereas at the beginning of this path, I thought, yeah, sure, it's just my wife and I. We'll be on the island of Fiji for half the year. We'll be up in Montana half the year. We'll be there. No, it's not that easy. The fourth thing here is really probably one of the most important things for most people pursuing FIRE is how am I going to spend my time, right? I'm going from working a 40-hour job to what do I do now, right? Where am I going to spend my time? What is my passion? What are my hobbies? Am I going to be doing more of the same thing, of something different? Where am I going to spend my time? And my priorities in life have changed, right? Back in my late 20s, it was all about, leveling up my character and WoW. And now it's like, well, what do I do? Do I have other hobbies and passions? Things in your life, priorities in your life change. And factoring that in, how are you going to spend your time, right? My wife and I talk about this all the time, and we always kind of revert back to, the idea of we'd love to be able to be flexible and go and do things based off of what we want to do and not based off of something else. The reason why I have this on the list here is understand that your priorities are going to change from when you first start on this path to FIRE to once you get closer to actually reaching FIRE. There's so much development. There's so much personal development and growth that takes place over years and years. And it was something that I didn't really foresee happening. And it's pretty interesting looking back on it now. The fifth thing here is the big elephant in the room here is having a kid. My wife and I, we had our first kid and first and only kid. I'm done, one and done. We love our little baby Lucas, but he's a handful. We're just gonna have one kid, and I'm very, very happy about that, and I'm excited about it. But having a kid or kids is life-changing. And until you actually have a kid, you can't fully understand how much of an impact it changes your life. And, I'll give you just a random example, right? Right now, we have him at home. We have an in-house nanny. But in 3 years, 4 years, we want to have him interact with other kids. We want to put him maybe in preschool or something like that. And our lifestyle, living half the year in Fiji and the other half in Montana, that's not going to be very easy to do. We've kind of gone back and forth. Well, do we homeschool? Do we put him in school? Do we have him in any sports, right? So that he can meet other kids and make friends. It's all of those things that it never crossed my mind 5 years ago. And it's the top of my mind right now. And it's on my mind every day. And it's very much at the core of, when we make our decisions based off of where we're going to go, where we're going to be, what things are going to cost, healthcare costs, just to name a few, we're now planning for 3, whereas back then we were only planning for 2, and we didn't really fully understand, the impact that it would have on our lives, right? And, just an example, we want our little boy to be able to see his grandparents, right? We want him to be able to spend time with his grandparents, and depending on where they're at and what they're doing and what we're doing and where he maybe makes friends, it's just a lot of stuff. The next one here is, answering the question, when enough is enough? And so I've thought about this a lot. My wife and I, we don't have really expensive taste. We're pretty dang frugal. We don't spend a lot of money. And I'm more, a value guy. Like, I will, out of principle, not go buy a pizza that costs $20 because I think it's ridiculous. I will not spend money where I don't think that there's value. And it's answering the question, well, when do I have enough? And this has been something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is I have a good amount of money. I have savings. We have the house. We have 2 cars. When do we have enough? How much do we need to travel? What is enough? At what point are we going above and beyond and where we're not going to actually gain happiness from it? And so this has been on my mind a lot where it's thinking, okay, when is enough, right? And that was never something that crossed my mind when we first started. It was like, oh, I want it all. I want it all. I want everything. I want to be able to do endless amounts of everything. And now it's like, well, no, I don't really need that. No, I can go without that. Oh, things, your priorities in life change. The last thing here is, what's my plan B, right? What's my safety net? This is probably on a lot of people's mind. Well, if I quit my job, what if a black swan event happens and, I have to go back to work? Like every person's nightmare, right? Like, could you imagine, you quit your job and then all of a sudden, hey guys, I'm back. No, that's not going to happen. So you got to have a plan B, and you want to have a safety net. Whenever I do my forecasting in terms of my modeling and, crunching the numbers, I'm usually pretty conservative. And I think, having a plan B is important. This plan B is going to be different for everyone. I've joked around with my wife. I was like, well, heck, you can go back and work at GameStop if you want. She's a gamer. She loves video games, and she would love it. She wouldn't mind it. And for me, it's like, okay, well, I guess I could go back and get maybe another part-time job or something. But for me, it's probably like, you know what? I probably would double down on YouTube or something. I have a passion there. I might do other things, maybe start a business or something like that. But that would be more so my plan B. But I'm sharing that with you to think about, okay, when I first started down this path, it was only plan A, right? Reach fire, get enough in dividend income, and that's the plan. There was no plan B. But now it's like, okay, well, black swans happen all the time, right? Things could happen. Things happen all the time. And so you want to start thinking more. I've noticed that I think about this a little bit more now as we get closer and closer to this date, and just making sure that the, hey guys, I'm back, doesn't happen. And that, if we do go back to work, it's by choice. It's not because we absolutely have to. Right? So those are the things that come to mind for me. Kind of a different video this week. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it kind of sparked, a new way of thinking, for the majority of you out there who are younger, that are maybe earlier stages of, this path to fire. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch everybody in next week's video.
You know what? I think we're gonna be friends. Can everyone say hi to my friend? That's crazy. I just wanted to say thanks. I'm glad you came along, partner.